It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, November 7th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is a little nervous about a trap game against the Sharks, but also wants to check in with the Phantoms and see how they're doing.
A lot of people are nervous. A lot of fans are nervous about this one.
Yeah, we will get into it all on today's show.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at @rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. And as a show, we are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. You can find our show for free over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, like we just mentioned, the Flyers are starting their California road trip tonight. So we've got some Flyers after dark action against the San Jose Sharks. And it is a little bit nerve-wracking going into it, as we mentioned.
Well, for some Flyers fans, it'll be a bonus that they can't watch it because it's on ESPN Plus and not local TV. So they might take the cue on that one and just wait for the results. There's some nervousness out there, and I get it. And we talked about it last show. I think you have to go about this game very carefully because your team didn't play well last game. You're traveling. You don't want it to be a trap game, like you said, or a letdown game. And that's why I think you have to work really hard. I think do it from the beginning. Outwork them from the very beginning. I think if they do that and they play it tight to the vest, this team's going to make mistakes. And I think you could live with the Sharks' mistakes. But if you do play that open ice, fast and loose stuff, anything can happen against teams. A couple of turnovers and you could be in trouble.
Yeah, it is interesting. And just in case you are blissfully unaware of just how bad the Sharks have had it this season, they are winless thus far, are 0-10-1, which tied the NHL record for 11 straight losses to start the season. So they could be setting a record should the Flyers win this game. They have 2 games in a row where they have had 10 goals against. So the Canucks and Pens. Yeah, the Canucks and Pens each put up 10 goals against this Sharks team. The last time a team allowed 10 or more goals in consecutive games was in 1965, which was the Boston Bruins. So it's been a while since that has happened. And also to give you a sense of it's not even close here. Again, you look at those 2 results alone, it's going to be a problem for you. But their goal differential right now is at a negative 43.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, in comparison, the Flyers are at a negative 2.
Right. I don't think they're 73, 74 caps bad, but I think they're close. But I look at the team, and while they're not scoring goals, and I get that they're not scoring goals, I do look at their lines. They do have some young players. They do have some speed. So even someone like Duclair, you don't want this to be his breakout game because, you can't keep up with him. Because Anthony Duclair does seem to do well against the Flyers. He seems to find those seams. He seems to get shots on net. I know Zadina scored a few goals. We know he has some goal scoring in him. You just don't want to make them comfortable in this game. So all of a sudden they're feeling comfortable and they get the best out of them. That's what I'm saying. Keep them on edge the entire game. Don't let them settle in for the first 2-3 minutes at least. Because if they settle in and they feel good, then it could be a different game.
Right. And Michael Granlund was supposed to be a stabilizing force
Yeah.
on this team, and that has not proved to be true thus far. The lines that we saw from the Sharks in the last game aren't necessarily what we're going to see because they have been doing this line blender action pretty much every game because they're trying everything and anything to make something go their way. And so it's really hard to predict what they're going to do from game to game at this point. If you look at their blue line, I would say, uh, other than Vlasic and Jan Ruta, maybe like the names are very unfamiliar to most people. Um, it's not that they aren't good NHL players. It's just that there's a lot of kind of newness to the Sharks there, and so I do think there's ways that the Flyers can take advantage of this. But again, like you mentioned, like the main point of this game is just don't do anything stupid. Like if you're the
Yeah.
Flyers, and don't get sucked into any like fights for no good reason, like to go down a man. Don't take dumb penalties. Like just you just got to play this one so smart and by the book.
Yeah, I mean Mario Ferraro has become a really good defenseman with them. Like I like Ferraro. I liked him a lot last year too. Shintsov is actually a good story because he was completely undrafted and and they found him and he's a decent player. Vlasic, yeah, his play has dipped and the coach kind of
Yeah.
called him out on it recently. So but they, again, they can be physical, these guys, and they have other guys in the lineup like Giovanni Smith who are not afraid to mix it up. So you have to be aware of that. And if they use Blackwood, like Blackwood has had a 51 game save game this year, I mean, so there are some things there. Again, they're all professionals. At the end of the day, this is their worst possible scenario. And you just don't want to be the team that all of a sudden, they decide they're going to get a win against and play their best game of the year. Like that's the worry here. This is not the easiest of games for them to walk into. They would probably rather walk into even the Ducks game where they just played them. They kind of know what they are, and even though they're on a hot streak, they know something. This is like the
Yeah.
unknown here.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point as well. And, with the travel involved, and then, this is a home game for the Sharks, time zone issues. We're all still groggy from the time change a little bit.
I'm not
Uh,
groggy. I
s-
got more sleep. What do you mean?
well, sometimes making the adjustment is hard for some people. And then when you add travel into it, it
You're
just kind of
asking me to
maybe
get more sleep.
exacerbates
That's an easy adjustment for me. Just saying.
it. All right. Well, I do think though, yeah, it is a dangerous situation to walk into. And I do think the Flyers should and will win this game. I just think it's going to be a bit of a battle for them. Again, just because the Sharks, after that second game in a row, giving up 10 goals, are just like humiliated. And there's like just an emotional like load on their shoulders that they want to get off as soon as possible. And like I would hate to see the Flyers fall victim to that. And I'm not expecting the Flyers to score 10 goals against the Sharks team, but I do think that maybe getting some insurance goals will be helpful for the
Yeah,
Flyers in this one and scoring more.
yeah. Insurance goals would be helpful. Scoring more would be helpful. Um, Fewer turnovers would be helpful. Like we're not going to
Yeah.
see the best goaltending we could ever see from the Flyers. Our son's really good though, but again, the play in front of him hasn't been great, and that could be better.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think that's it's going to be really important for the Flyers to achieve that balance that we talked about in terms of being aggressive offensively versus having, a tight defensive structure and not air too much on either side, right? We really want to see them, balance those two aspects of their game, but take advantage of offensive opportunities. And I think, what they've been doing in terms of carrying the puck a little bit more will be helpful to them in this game in particular. And I think that, dumping the puck isn't going to prove to be useful for them because the Sharks are going to be super aggressive on puck retrieval in this one, I think.
Yeah, this is one where Konechny and Atkinson could really shine. Do we know about Couturier?
Not as of recording.
Okay, so we don't know, but for the other two, they could really lead in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. But should be an interesting one. And
Ah,
hope we've
say
all
that, and people are
uh,
like, "Oh, they're scared to death."
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you wanna, like, have some caffeinated beer for this one to get through it, but, if there is such a thing.
I
But,
don't know. There
yeah,
might be.
we will, of course, talk about the results of this one on tomorrow's show. In the meantime, it is Phantoms Tuesday, and we're 10 games into that season, and we wanna talk about what's going on with those prospects in Lehigh Valley, and we'll do that coming up next.
Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over unders, and more. For the for this upcoming week, I still would take the Eagles and the over as an example. Their defense might not be as good as it was, but their offense is still really good. So that may be a good one for this week. So visit fanduel.com/locked on and get into the action this NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Of course, we will be talking about the Sharks game on tomorrow's show. They are playing at 10:30 tonight, so you can catch every second of the Flyers' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search for Flyers. We will also have a mailbag this week, so get those questions in via email at lockedonflyers@gmail. You can also comment over on YouTube. Russ, the Phantoms, similar to what we talked about last week with the Flyers being 10 games into the season, the Phantoms are also now 10 games into their season and are currently 4-4-2. They're in sixth place in their division and 10th in the conference overall. And that is certainly not where we might have liked them to be.
No, I mean, I certainly had higher expectations. I'm a little disappointed in this last weekend. I'm a little disappointed just in, there's some good things going on, don't get me wrong, but I don't like this rotation either. I mean, I get it. You have players, you want to play them, but I do think it's taken away from certain prospects. And so there's a part of me that doesn't love it. It's early in the season, so we'll see if that, corrects itself.
Yeah, just a couple of key stats and notes about the Phantoms right now, 10 games in. They actually have the most penalty minutes in the entire AHL right
It's
now,
crazy.
which is absolutely overkill. 173 penalty minutes in 10 games, and they are about 20 minutes ahead of the next closest team below them. They've had several misconducts, and that's partially why. So, some 10-minute penalties here and
Yeah.
there will add up. But still, like, that is not where you want to be. Like, you kind of want to be mid league or better, or which means lower number of penalty minutes, because all you're doing is giving opposing teams power play opportunities.
I mean, John Tortorella does not coach the AHL team, but some of the aspects of the Flyers are rubbing off on the Phantoms for sure. And that's that toughness thing that they want to have through the organization. And we've talked about it. Toughness is great, but there's a way to do it smartly too.
Yeah, we just talked about the goal differential for the Sharks and the Flyers. The Phantoms are at a -8 right now. So that's not ideal either. But I will say, and this is an explanation, not an excuse to a large degree, because this is the nature of the AHL, what it is. It's a prospect development and it's a feeder league, right? So your lineup is going to change very frequently. But the Phantoms do have quite a number of injuries. We obviously know what the goaltending situation is with Felix Sandstrom's injury on his conditioning assignment. Nolan Meyer got called back up to back up Parker Gahagan. And we also have the injuries for Emil Andre. We've had Adam Brooks injured since the beginning of the season. Adam Karashik was injured Wednesday, so he was out the rest of the weekend. We've had this illness going around that Tanner
Seems like they
Lazinski
have
was.
100-man roster, doesn't it? It's
I know.
unbelievable.
Yeah, so Tanner Laczynski was out all last weekend due to this illness, and then Ronnie Attard and Wade Allison got hit with it this weekend. So, yeah, Ronnie Attard was out all weekend with this
Oof.
illness, and then Wade Allison was very clearly not in great shape Friday when he played, and then was out Saturday. So I'm giving Wade Allison a pass for this
Yeah, sure.
weekend because he was sick. But yeah, so much injury stuff going on, but they still have this rotation going on with different guys coming in and out. The lineup changed a ton over the course of this past weekend. But there are some, high points as well. If you look at the scoring leaders for the Phantoms right now, Olle Lycksell, man, 8 goals, 0 assists. Like that is baller right there to
I mean,
have
it is. It's
all
just
your points be
I
goals.
feel bad. I just feel like even if he has like 30 goals at the All-Star break, that he may not get called up.
Yeah, I would say so. So right now, if you look at him in the context of the AHL, we talked about if guys are going to be standouts in the AHL, they really need to be like near the top of the list in the AHL. So Lycksell is 49th in the AHL right now, and Laczynski and Tuomaala are in the 60s, very close to each other, which is good, but not great. I
Right.
would say, for these guys where the expectations are certainly high, especially for Lycksell and Laczynski, who are
Yeah.
borderline NHLers, right?
Yeah.
Tuomaala is still a growing player, so to see him
Yeah,
up
yeah, yeah.
there is
He's
actually
developing.
really good.
Yes.
Yeah, so
He's
and
done
we'll
well.
get to
So,
more about him, but if you look at the most points in the AHL right now is 16, Lycksell's got the 8. So, the most points by a player in only 10 games, which is equal to the Phantoms, is 13. So that's still like 5 points ahead of Lycksell right now.
right.
Um,
Well, that's fair.
but
It's something to shoot for.
yeah, so he's not too far behind, and there's
No.
certainly chances for these guys to catch up. You just want to see them scooch up those standings as the season progresses, right? There's like nothing to worry about here at this moment.
No, there's no worry, but it's kind of like they do need to be more consistent. They're not consistent enough right now.
Right, and you look at the game results from this past weekend as a prime example of that. It was like OT City for them,
Yeah.
where all 3 games went to overtime, and they lost 2 of them, and they won 1 of them.
Yeah.
Now, we can get into the 3rd one and why we think they lost that game and, in terms of the penalty calling situation there. But, I think that, in some of these games, they came from behind. In some of these games, they blew a lead, but then tied it
Yeah.
up and then either won or lost in overtime, right? And so we just need a little bit more consistency from these guys and to really learn how to hold on to a lead a little better.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I mean, I think that's something where Ian LePerrier has to really work hard on because, again, you don't
Mhm.
want the season to get away from you because, 2 or 3 more weekends, and you should have an idea of what this team is, and you should have a more regular lineup that you put in there too at that point.
Yeah, I would say so. And I do think that, there are certainly bright spots here that we're going to talk about for the rest of the show. But, I think that there's certainly some guys where expectations have been a lot higher than the results. I would say Elliot Denoye,
Mhm.
though he is getting better, I think, in his playmaking is there. He's just not getting on the board in as much of a significant way as possible.
Not a
But
horrible year, just disappointing start.
disappointing start. Yeah, there's totally room for growth there and room for him to really improve. So again, I'm not really worried because I see the effort is there. But then you also look at kind of overall with this team, special teams. The power play got a little better this past weekend. They didn't get a ton of opportunities like in the past couple of weeks. They've been getting 5 or 6 opportunities a game. Now they're back down to 3, 1, 2, or 3 opportunities a game, and they scored 2 power play goals on 6 chances, which is not horrible,
I mean, for the
you know?
Flyers, it would be great. So just for
Yeah,
comparison,
exactly. Yeah, and their PK is like fairly solid.
yeah,
They only let in 2 goals on 14 chances. So that's pretty
well,
good.
that's good. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, so, there's a lot of good here, there's a lot of needs improvement here, there's a lot of things are getting shuffled because of injuries here, and with especially, like, with Ronnie Attard being out, Jinning has been paired with Samson now, and, things are all off
Yeah,
kilter.
little askew, but they're finding a good pairing out of all this too,
Yeah.
that we'll eventually talk about.
Yeah. So, I think that there is a lot of good information we've gotten so far on some of these prospects, and we will talk about sort of who stood out this past weekend and the prospects overall coming up next. You know that feeling when your favorite Flyers player scores a hat trick? If you want to get that feeling and win 100 times your money, play Daily Fantasy Hockey on the Sleeper app. As the official daily fantasy app of Locked On NHL Network, Sleeper is our top choice for daily fantasy sports, especially fantasy hockey. With Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in all of their contests. You can also play daily fantasy NFL, NBA, and college football on Sleeper, and your entries can be made in under a minute with elite players like Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, and Austin Matthews, plus the new guys like Connor Bedard and maybe Bobby Brink on the Flyers. All you need to do is make more or less picks on stats for these stars. You choose from stats like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more. To win 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Flyers fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying close attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. So, Russ, talking about this past weekend as far as the standout players to kind of kick off the prospects 10 games in so far. Obviously, you want to talk about J.R. Avon because he scored not only his first goal as a pro, but his second this weekend. So that was really good to see. And he got his nose broken in that game on Wednesday. So he was
That's a tough
wearing a
one. No,
full,
that's really painful. It's very, very
yes,
painful.
he had to have it reset. And so he was wearing a
Oh,
full cage, like not a full cage, but like the clear
yeah.
mask. I forget what they call that when it's not a cage, but yeah, so rough game for him physically, but he and Samu Tuomaala, who's another player I would highlight as having a great weekend overall. For one of J.R. Avon's goals, he and Tuomaala had a great passing sequence. It was like 3 or
I
4
saw that.
short
That was really
passes.
impressive.
Yeah, just really smart passing, really smart decision making on both their parts. I was really pleased to see that. And so, Avon got those 2 goals for the weekend. Samu Tuomaala had a goal and 2 assists on Friday, including the overtime game winning goal in that game. His pass to Olle Lycksell for the power play goal on Friday was phenomenal. He got an assist on Saturday as well, really active in that game. So I think like the 2 of them to me stood out the most on that team.
Well, let's talk about somebody who we've talked about a lot on the show, Mason Millman. So I've just done a dive
Yeah.
into some of his numbers. I mean, he's got 2 points in 3 games now that he's been getting a little bit of a break because of the sickness. 20 minutes of ice time, 43% of shots on goal, 63% puck battles won. Like, he's 22 years old, and this is why I advocate him getting more playing time because he could fall through the wickets and end up in some other organization. And, you see him at age 25, and all of a sudden you're like, why didn't he do this for the Flyers? And so, like, this could be why. And this is, I hope that when things get back to normal, that he doesn't just get, pushed to the bench because he's done very well.
Well, and that's why I would give Mason Millman and Will Zmolek kind of the combo third star of the week
Yeah.
because both of them got called up from Reading to fill in with all the sicknesses and injuries we've had. And so they each were part of they were part of the second and third pairings. Both played tremendously. To your point with Millman's stats, and Millman was a +3 as a defenseman in his games with the Phantoms so far, which is tremendous. And, they just plug and played right in and picked up where other defensemen left off and had a real solid weekend overall. I think Zamolek is kind of hit or miss a little bit, but he was really putting in the effort, and especially because he was paired with Adam Karashik at first, but then, as I mentioned, he got hurt. So then Brady got called up from Reading, and so he was paired with Brady. Now maybe that helped because they had some familiarity with some of the time in Reading, but still, like, to be able to just like come up and step right in and make an impact for both of them, I thought was just really good to see for both of them, just from a making a name for themselves perspective.
It's good for both because they could have easily just sort of been not demoralized, but just rusty, not with it. They haven't played much, and they really made the most of their opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of looking at some of the other guys that we haven't talked about so far, we did actually talk about Cooper Marody
Mhm.
last week, as one of like the two-way contract guys that stood out. I think he continues to play really well. Man, he is taking a beating sometimes. Like, he
Sure,
had like
he's not the
two
biggest guy.
solid, yeah, so he got, like, drilled into the boards a couple of times that I saw over the weekend, but he still had a goal on Wednesday and an assist on Saturday and stayed active in the offense. And, especially we talk about the Phantoms power play. It was completely off the rails because they had, you know, just people who weren't used to playing on the power play, like Ethan Sampson. So he's had to step up with all
Yeah.
the injuries and call ups. He had to quarterback the power play, which, like, that's not his bailiwick, right?
No, I mean, no, he gets points 5 on 5. He certainly has played power play. There's no question. But at this
Yeah.
level, no.
Right. So he made a mistake that led to a shorthanded goal, but he has a lot to learn. He's still making great strides. And the fact that he was just getting some experience on the power play, which is something that he doesn't normally do, I think is good for him from
It is
a
good for him. There's no
development
negative.
perspective.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, talked about Wade Allison kind of getting a pass this week because he wound up being really sick. Olle Lycksell scored a goal on Friday, continues to be impactful. Tanner Lazinski, coming back from illness, had 2 assists for the weekend. Again, very engaged in the power play, I would say, and on the penalty kill, he's played especially well there, and I think is becoming a true leader on this team.
He was a leader in college. It's not surprising he's becoming a leader here. And I do think if given like a more of a path in the NHL, like more games, that he could, surprise you and do better than what he showed when he's been up before.
Yeah, and, Adam Jennings continues to just do his thing. A
He
goal
does.
on Wednesday and an assist on Friday. Again, for a guy that we don't expect scoring from, he's getting a decent amount of scoring.
Yeah, I mean, if all of a sudden he starts to score, he becomes a lot more just a better prospect than we even thought. Like we knew he was a good prospect, and I've tracked him,
Mhm.
his entire time. But if all of a sudden this offense blossoms, that's something that none of us really foresaw.
Yeah. So I'm very impressed with his Phantom season so far. Again, just like kind of got to see where things settle out if people come back from injury and illness, and the lines and the defensive pairings kind of shake themselves out, and they can get a regular power play unit going, maybe get some experience with better puck movement and all of that. But I would say in terms of prospect development, I would give this team maybe a solid B right now. B minus.
I'm at a C right now, it could be better. A few more minutes here and there. Like I would love it if Millman all of a sudden started to get time 2 out of every 3 games. I'm not going to hold my breath. I know it's not happening.
Yeah. And for me, I want to see Gendron get a little bit more time, and I want to see Zayd Wisdom get a little more time.
Yeah, I'd like to
Um,
see because again, if you really want to develop a power forward, he's got to play.
so again, there's a lot to keep an eye on. There's a lot to look forward to. A lot of good results so far. A lot of growth. So I'm still very excited about this Phantoms team and what could come from it. And we'll see over the next few weeks. Again, the goaltending situation is a whole other ball of wax,
Yeah,
which
that's a whole
relates
different
to
show, man. That's
yeah, yeah. So we'll get into that separately. But the Phantoms have a few games this week. They are at Springfield Wednesday. They are home on Saturday against Hershey, and then on the road at Hershey on Sunday. So that back-to-back against Hershey is going to be huge for them.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Could be sweet though.
Yeah, we should be chocolatey
Ah,
sweet. All right, Russ. That'll do it for today's show. On tomorrow's show, we're going to recap that game against the Sharks. We'll have our mailbag. So send in those questions via Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment over on YouTube. Catch every second of the Flyers hometown broadcast tonight at 10:30 on the Sirius XM app, SXM. Search for Flyers. I am Rachel. I'm on the app formerly known as Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a great day, everyone.